I'm Sydney,
And I'm Julie.
and this is Restaurant and Retail Revelations. Welcome to Restaurant and Retail Revelations, a podcast spotlighting movers and shakers in the hospitality industry. This podcast is made possible by Revel Systems, provider of the leading cloud-native POS platform on the market.
And in this episode, we're sitting down with Reed Daniels, CEO of Red Savoy Pizza, which is a Minneapolis-based brand with nearly 60 years of serving Minnesota's hungry pizza enthusiasts. And as with many great stories, this one starts at a bar, but we'll share more on that later in the episode.
Yes, Red Savoy doesn't have the most conventional history as far as pizzerias are concerned, but it's definitely one born of passion and people, and I'm excited to learn more about the franchise's evolution from Reed.
Let's get to it. Here's Reed.
Reed, welcome officially to the Restaurant and Retail Revelations podcast. We're very excited to have you in the guest seat today. And to get things started, I want to dive into Red Savoy, the history in particular. It's a pizza franchise with a super cool history. And I just want to make sure our listeners who aren't from Minnesota and maybe haven't had the opportunity to experience the famous Sota-Style pizza get a bit of background first. So will you talk to us a little bit about the founding and give us an overview of how it's evolved into today's growing franchise?
Thanks, guys. I'd love to. It actually started off back in 1965. Red was it's Red's Savoy Pizza, not red as the color. Red was a guy. He went by Red because he had fiery red hair back in the day. When I met him back in 2012, he was white haired, but he was a bouncer at a towny bar in downtown St. Paul, and then became a bartender. The bar came up for sale, bought the bar. The pizza place connected to it came up for sale. He cut a hole in the wall and bought that too, and started messing with the recipe in the 60s. And so really started on like this dive bar and no natural light, and made a great pizza. And it's kind of part of, the ethos of the brand that's continued for 57 years now is bountiful toppings. We rolled out our new mission that is, going to be front forward, guest facing as well as internal, as skimpy as wimpy. We're ridding the world of skimpy wimpy pizzas, and the goal in that was Red. It's a very blue collar story of like, a handful of this and a handful of that on pizzas. But the difference was Red's hands were the size of bears. And so he would just put handfuls and handfuls of toppings. And so on a thin crust, our house special, which is our most popular, kind of like a garbage or supreme, is 3.5 pounds. It's like, this is a no joke pizza. And so it started in the 60s, and it was like this, special place. And then he opened a couple satellite locations for his family. And then after his wife passed, he'd been heckled for 20, 30 years if people could, open another one. He always said no. And then after his wife passed, he decided, sure, you can go buy the sauce, the sausage, the boxes, and the cheese for me. Go do whatever you want. And there wasn't standards and systems and everything like that. And they had the ingredients, but they didn't have the processes. They didn't have the measurements. They didn't have the technology. They didn't have all of that other stuff. So we flipped them in 2010, 11, 12 to be franchises instead of license agreements. And then we had about 8 locations at that time, and standardizing processes and getting everything, repeatable without bastardizing quality. He said, my attorneys, censor me a little bit on this, but he said, whatever you do, don't mess with my pizza. Before, that was not the exact words he said. It was a little more colorful. And before he passed in 2017. So back in the day, we, got on our first POS system into 2013. Back in the day with those 8 locations, they had 3 different POSs and cash registers at all their locations. And then we got online ordering, and then we got loyalty, and then we got gift cards. And so like every year was another big project. And then in 17, we updated our logo, updated our branding at the time, kind of put our stake in the flag of what Sota-Style pizza is. And then, here we are today, 2022, 18 locations, 3 more in build, and about another 10 in development after that. So we're carrying the baton of Red now after his passing to say this product is really, really good. I will put it up against any pizza in America because of the sauce. The sauces and the sausage are proprietary. Our cheese is proprietary, all that kind of stuff. But like that sauce on a pizza is what makes it. And it's a little bit bold and on the spicy side, and people love it and have for 57 years.
What a great story. We love a good founder driven origin story here. It sounds like there's a lot of passion behind the brand too. And I hate skimpy topping pizza. So I'm a fan of Red already. And you just mentioned the sauce. I want to dig into this famous Sota-Style pizza a bit more. I know you have this thin but durable crust. That's a key element, but I want to learn more about the passive aggressive sauce. And I'm using air quotes there. What
Yeah.
qualifies a sauce as passive aggressive? And are there any other signature features that qualify a pizza as Sota-Style?
Yeah, so if we'll get to the passive aggressive piece in a second, but it's thin crust, the passive aggressive pizza sauce, loaded with toppings, smothered in cheese, cut into squares. And so there's some density when you get to some of those toppings on there. And so the on the Sota-Style, or on the passive aggressive sauce, that's kind of a nod to our culture up here in Minnesota, where we're pretty passive aggressive up here. As like we have like it's kind of like those backhanded comments that your aunt makes. And so that's kind of what we tie into our sauce. So it's got flavor on the front side and then a little bit heat on the back side. And so that it's just kind of a nod to our culture, and people here can resonate with that.
Well, that sounds delicious. And Julie and I have got to work on when we schedule these because it's always right before lunch and I'm always starving by the end. So, won't be able to dig into Sota-Style from here in Atlanta, but it's definitely it's inspired my next meal. So kind of building on that and the Minnesota culture and the nod to passive aggression in kind of a fun and playful way, your branding is actually very playful and fun and kind of a nod to what sounds like Red. And he just seems like a very spirited founder himself. And so I'd love to dig into that more in a moment. But I also know you personally come from a marketing background and that you started with a BS in consumer science and business affairs. And so I'm just curious, like, how did that background ultimately lead you to Red Savoy and then to the CEO seat?
Great question. So, a lot of times in restaurants, there's going to be like typically three types of people that are CEOs. You have a hat on when you're the CEO of a business. Number one, finance. Number two, ops. Or number three, marketing and sales. A lot of times in restaurants, you see that being operations led. Being an operations led business, and then as you get bigger, then it starts to have a finance led team. And it's not typically common to have a marketing led team or a CEO. And so my background being in consumer affairs and businesses is why consumers make the decisions that they do and how to impact that for your business. So that's one of the reasons I'm a huge proponent of loyalty programs. Consumers have a ton of choices these days, and it is the only thing that is going to win long term, in my opinion, is brand and the feelings that people associate with that product. And so I was working for another company selling digital technology, so websites, social media, and everything. And I talked to my fiance at the time, and I said, "Hey, I think I want to start my own digital company." And she is relatively risk averse, but she said, "Go ahead." And I was like, "Whoa, hey, wow, you're backing me up, and we're not even married yet." And that's love it. And so she puts a lot of her gamble in me. And I randomly, with a friend, went to a networking event and met an attorney to help start my business. And she happened to be the attorney for Red Savoy as they were flipping from licensees to franchisees. And they hired me as the first client. And so, or they were my first client, as for $600 a month as a contractor to handle digital. And then that was a very small team back in the day, but it was very much a gritty, everybody's wearing we're still this way 10 years later, but everybody's got multiple hats on. And so that was when we originally went through the first iteration of POS back in 2013 onto a system, and then those other projects, from online ordering, which has vastly changed from 2013 to now. But every year taking on that next big project. And then, here we are today. And so in 17, I wanted to rebrand the business. And we had an old logo that was about 8 different fonts and hard to read. And I said, we need to streamline this for the next 20 years, right? Whatever that time frame is. And so we rebranded in 17, did the Sota-Style thing. They promoted me to president in 17. And then in 18, I said, hey, this is what I want to do over the next 3 to 5 years. And we got to a point that it was Red's Kids then at that time, that we put together a plan for me to take it over and buy the brand in 19. And so that's the down and dirty of my history. But I think that one of the things that we push for is always like pushing the edge on that marketing side of it, making it fun and appealing, because that's the part of like going back to consumer behavior is when food can stop being a commodity and you can push towards experience. That's where I think that, brands really flourish.
Yeah, I guess the lesson learned is always attend the networking event. You never know what's going to come of it.
Yeah, my
And
attorney Meredith is amazing, and she's still a great friend, and I still
wow.
with her firm and everything like that. And so, yeah, it's been you never know where you're going to meet your next lead and next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And as marketers ourselves, we couldn't agree more. The brand is the nucleus of everything. So, and speaking of marketing, we want to unpack some of these more memorable marketing campaigns that Sydney highlighted earlier. And to set the stage for some of our listeners, I'd specifically like to hear about a few kind of the behind the scenes thinking that went into a few of these campaigns, specifically the commercials featuring the Minnesota Golden Gophers football coach, PJ Fleck. We also saw the pizza box pull tab campaign, and then the meat raffle bingo. So yeah, do you have a kind of a behind the scenes look at any of those?
So I'm a Badger. I went to Wisconsin. I love the Wisconsin Badgers. My wife has had season tickets to the Gophers for like 20 years. However, I love PJ Fleck, the Gophers head coach. Everything he talks about is culture, building teams, playing at a high level, and he is authentic as authentic can be. And so when he came to Minnesota, I was like, oh shit, now we have an actual viable like coach that we have to play against, right? Like a real deal football team. Because it's Burr. If you look at like early 2000s to like 3 years ago, Wisconsin beat Minnesota every year in football. And so I like living in Minneapolis, got to know, his culture, what he did. He's spoken at a franchisee convention for us. And then we had these ideas for these commercials, which were pretty fun. But he was a consummate pro. It was like the hottest day of the summer, and he's filming. And there was one take he had to like be on a knee for like an hour, and he just did it. He crushed it, and he's amazing. But it really tied into kind of like the tongue in cheek that we like to play, and like not taking ourselves too seriously. And it's just kind of that hometown guy, and he actually did the Barstool pizza reviews for us during the Super Bowl. So like we had no idea it happened, and we thought that they were going to come because they did like a bunch of pizza places, and he was a special guest for that. So we had no idea, and that kind of started our relationship there. And then pull tabs we'll go to last, but meat raffle bingo, but we have a meat raffle pizza too. Meat raffles are a very Minnesota Midwest thing. I don't know if you guys have them down in Atlanta, but it's you go to a bar and you buy a raffle ticket for $1, and if they pull your raffle ticket, you win meat. It's like as simple as you can be. Like it's
What
like
kind of meat? Any meat?
like steaks, hot dogs, like
Okay.
there's just like a like if you like Google it, a lot of times county bars have like a pool table and like fill up the pool table, and if you like your ticket gets called, you get to go pick your meat, right? And so you're like getting meat for like $1 if you win, right? And so it's a weird thing, but it's a very Minnesota thing. So our meat raffle, instead of a meat lovers pizza, it's a meat raffle pizza. Meat raffle bingo was a way we gave away bingo cards during the pandemic with every large pizza. And then I think they're still out there on Facebook, but I ran bingo from my house drinking White Claws and gave away prizes to whoever won bingo, and we did like these virtual game nights with our customers. That was probably, I don't know, maybe summer 2020. And then pull tabs are also a Minnesota thing. They are kind of like McDonald's Monopoly game. where you pull them and you pop them open, you 3 chances to win. And so we give away a free pull tab with every large pizza for a chance to win free pizza for a year. And so that's kind of like the Willy Wonka golden ticket, but we've got millions of cards out there. We have, hundreds of grand prize winners. My philosophy in going back to marketing and everything like that is not to discount. We are a very low, no discount company. And so that's our way to look at marketing in a way that says a lot of pizza places, the box toppers, whatever, say $5 off a pizza, $3 off a pizza, whatever. And I think it's lazy marketing. I think that now, there's a company out there that will not be named, but they if you ever pay full price for them, I don't know why you would, because they always have a discount, whatever you could possibly want. And then you just devalued your company. Like there's a pizza place locally here that was $5 pizza. They no longer exist because you can't have $5 pizza in 2022. Correct. And so if you pigeon yourself on price and not quality, it's a race to the bottom, in my opinion. And so this is a way for people very similar to the eBay effect of winning and creating an emotional attachment to the brand and not expecting that discount or offer every single time they order.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a creative way to stay engaged. It's different. So in a way, your campaign is also kind of a market differentiator. And I just love that about marketing as a practice, is that it's often the cross section between fun and experimental and experiential, but then also backed by numbers. You're going to move forward with the things that move the needle and are, showcasing your brand's value, your product's value. And I know that you are a numbers driven kind of guy. And I'd love to kind of dig into a little bit more how data insights come into play with just the operational processes, menu items, and kind of other areas at Red Savoy restaurants.
I'm going to add one thing back to the pizza pull tabs piece before I answer the question. Is purposely, as we go digital and we go data and all that kind of stuff, I was really intentional of bringing a tangible analog experience in the digital world, right? Like I really wanted them to tear it open and hear the click, 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 and have that chance of winning, kind of like a scratch off, in a digital world with digital coupons and whatever that happens, because very similar to a Cracker Jack toy or that thing in the Cracker Jack box, it is some sort of nostalgia, and that I wanted to harken back to like the good old days, if you will, right? And so, I think that as marketers, we are really like, how do we know this marketing's working? How do we whatever? But like, what is the experience we want our customers to have? And we just about to launch Revel into our locations, and part of it was we need that digital experience for the guests to be really high in store. But then what does the takeaway leave behind? And there's all this AR and and AR is not the right word. That video, alternative augmented reality. It is AR. Augmented reality, where you can like see your couch from IKEA in your room to see if it fits and looks good and all that stuff. But at some point, and this is where we're using technology in order to simplify our systems and processes in order to have more face time with our guests. So we've never used third-party delivery. We really want to make sure that we get that guest touch point no matter where we go. We might look at them as a order source, but we will never lose the guest touch at the end of the transaction, because that's one of the only things that we have left, right? When someone orders online through the app and picks up a pizza, they still have to come see us, and we get a chance to smile and recognize them as human beings. Same thing on the delivery side. Delivery is baked into pizza, but it's really important that I think that that's the way brand supersedes, and that we don't become a commodity. When it comes to data-driven decisions, back in the day, an example of this, and I like to take out perspective or feelings in a lot of my decisions. There's like that gut feeling. You're like, is this right or wrong? I live on that a lot. But when we look at menus and all this kind of stuff, I remember when Red used to sell those license agreements and go do whatever you want. There was hot dogs and euros and mozzarella sticks and taco pizzas at all locations. And we would go in and we'd say, hey, let's look at all this. And the taco pizza at one location, the owner was adamant that like it's so good and people love it and everything. I said, well, let's go to the numbers, pull up your P mix and let's check it out. And he sold 3 in 12 weeks, right? And you have to bring in salsa and sour cream and chips and shredded lettuce and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, why are we trying to be everything to everyone? Right. And so let's cut it. We had dessert pizzas for a while, and my wife really liked the cherry dessert pizza. And I said, don't care, right? Like like I don't care your perspective because our customers are telling us what they like. And if they're not buying at a high level and it makes sense to stay on our menu, see you later. Some of our owners really like that. And, I really liked it too, but like at some point, we're under 100 total SKUs into the restaurant on the purchasing side. So we're really lean, low waste, cross-utilized everything. And so, if it's not selling, we have to bring in cherry topping and frosting and streusel for these pizzas that don't sell. Don't do it. And I think that one of the things that's really hard for restaurants right now is realizing it's your restaurant. We're in a franchise model, so the brand is the one that's deciding these things. But as independents and as other things, it's like this customer's never going to come back if we get rid of the blank burger. It's your restaurant, and if it doesn't make restaurant business sense, then don't do it. And I think that we lean towards we're going to lose them all or whatever. And if you have other offerings that are kick ass, and I'm also a perspective of do a couple things really well versus try to do everything. And there are brands that try to do everything to appease everybody, but the Applebee's, the TJ Fridays, like those diners that have like these crazy Cheesecake Factory, right? Or you can be really, really good at pizza, really, really good at burgers or wings, or just do what you do really well.
Yeah, which is simple in theory, but I think ultimately difficult to do. And using data to just take the emotion out of those decisions, I think is really smart. And I like how you said that. And you've spoken to a little bit about Revel already, but Revel employs your co-host here, Sydney and I, and we're also really excited that you guys just decided to move forward with Revel as your point of sale platform. So can you share a few of the key considerations that helped you guys zero in on Revel as the right point of sale for you guys? You already talked about just this idea of simplifying your operation so that you guys can focus on the guest experience. So that sounds like one. Any others?
Well, so I think if we go back to like the genesis of the reason to switch, there's a change equation. That is when your dissatisfaction is greater than your resistance and your first steps, like the easy first steps to do it. That being said, you're in a POS switch, your dissatisfaction has to be high, right? Because let's be honest, a POS switch is a pain in the ass. The technology, the setup, we're working with Kelly and her team, who's great, but like, at the end of this process, he's never going to want to talk to me and I'm never going to want to talk to him again because it's just hard, right? Like you're going through, and this is the way that we've done things for all these years. And so a POS change is, and I think that you guys have it in your logo, and I think it's your byline, is the heart of your business. It's the beginning, or it's like that hub for everything. And so we look for a partner that could handle pizza. Pizza's a little bit different with like the half and halves and all that kind of stuff. And then integrations goes second. So integrations, we have a really great partner in Patronics that is an integration partner for you guys. We handle all of our online ordering and loyalty through them. We're going to be switching our gift cards over to them. But that is, making sure that, we're not having to redo our whole ecosystem is a piece of that where we can just look at the POS, which is enough of it. And then the innovation side of it, and knowing and working with your team and talking to a couple of people on your team about the roadmap, and being able to see that there are other players out there that are just trying to hoard clients and cash and not reinvesting into the product. And so we wanted to elevate our guest experience, and so the guest, you go to Walgreens and they everybody asks you, do you want are you a loyalty member? Putting your phone number at checkout. Like we didn't have that functionality. That was something that when, like I said earlier in the podcast, was like I'm obsessed with loyalty, and we need to lower those hurdles for our guests to sign up or register or add their number to the transaction. And so some of those things, there's some, credit card processing savings that was huge in the Revel Advantage product. It doesn't sound like a lot, but we have 18 locations and $60 to $70 a month. And some of our stores will be even higher than that. It's 18 grand a year, right? And so that's a lot of dollar savings. But then the ease of use for the team. So if you look at it from there's three phases of the things that we look at. Is like, what's the guest experience? Is it going to be better? What's the employee experience and team member experience? Is it going to be better? And then what is our management and executive experience? Is it going to be better? The fact that it's cloud-based, and I joke with all my franchisees that I say, I want you to sit on the beach, and if you choose to look at how your store is doing, you should be able to. It's 2022. We didn't have that experience in our last POS. So it was, our scheduling, we're going to be moving to 7 shifts for scheduling, which is a great partner of yours. And so, we can do our scheduling from anywhere on the planet versus right now we have to be in store or remote in. And so all of these things that get to running a 2022 to 2030 business versus running a 1995 business.
Yeah, it's, there's something to moving with the times, and there are better tools out there than some of the original point of sale options, or even just basic cash registers. So that's awesome. And truly, we're so excited to have Red Savoy on as part of the family, as we say. Even if you don't want to talk to us after installation for a couple of days, we understand.
No, it's funny because so when I'm a certified installer trainer for our previous POS, and we would be switching stores over from cash registers and writing every name, and you do delivery. So the guest calls you every Friday night and says, hey, this is Bob at 1234 Main Street. And every week you have to put Bob 1234 Main Street, write it by hand and whatever. It was supremely inefficient. And when I would install them, I'm like, you're going to hate me for 3 days and you're going to love me forever. And that's the process of doing a POS switch is, it's hard, it's tedious. So I'm going to go in and work with our teams, and it's going to be hard, quote unquote, for the first couple of days because it's change. And then it'll get better. And then we'll be able to really start to have that snowball effect in terms of technology. So we're really excited about it too.
Very cool. So even amazing brands with creative marketing campaigns and rich histories face challenges. And maybe, building on some of the reasons that you were ready to make the switch with your POS, or perhaps in a totally different direction. I'm curious to know what the biggest challenges Red Savoy is facing right now are, and what kind of industry factors you are keeping your eye on closely this year.
So I think that I could have a scroll for this that just pops out and I start reading names off. It's not that bad. Holistically, supply chain's real, like the supply chain crunch and pricing and transportation costs and everything like that are real. We're starting to see I don't know if the word is a reversion, but a little bit less struggles with staffing. And I think that one of the reasons we're looking at, or we made the switch to Revel, is that we believe that some of the technology will help us with onboarding team members, teaching them. We're looking at some things inside of our kitchen too that will streamline and that will be a little bit easier. But supply chain we're building out new stores, and refrigeration is the problem of 2022. The timeline on refrigeration is insane. And so and just in general inflation, right? So everything's going up, right? And so not only is it sometimes a struggle to get it, and we have great partners. So our food providers are all that stuff, that's part of one of the benefits of franchising is we have buying power, and we say, hey, we can't be out of pepperoni. That's not an option. So and our partners that work with us, but that doesn't mean that doesn't go up in cost, right? And so, I think that it's a byproduct of inflation, but it's consumer mindset right now. Our consumer, specifically in the restaurant industry, our consumers can't change or flip the switch in their head on the cost of the restaurant's prices need to increase as fast as the restaurant needs to increase those prices. So, I went to Five Guys this was like last winter, and I got a burger, fries, and a pop, and it was $17. And I was like, excuse me, right? And we always like, maybe I threw in like the 10% tip on the screen, and so the business always gets blamed for the cost of the tax and everything like that when the Gus looks at the total amount, right? But 10-cent hamburger in 1960 is now $15, right? But because of the hyperinflation from 2020 to 2022, and specifically 2021 to 2022, that raise in that burger or wings, for example, we raised our wings from $8.99 to $11.99 for 6 jumbo wings, right? And you're like, $12 for 6 wings, and you're like, it's still the highest food costs on our menu, and so it should be significantly higher, but that we can't get the consumer there. And you see it at the grocery store, right? You go and I got deli ham the other month or so ago, and it's $12.99 a pound. I'm like, that's steak prices from in my brain, right? And so that is actually, I think, the biggest concern for me, because I don't see that our pricing is going to retract. And so the consumer getting there, it goes back down the line, is like, people need to make more money, right, in order to afford the pizzas and afford the burgers and groceries and rent and all those types of things. So, the economic impact right now is real.
Yeah, it definitely is. I feel all the same, financial burdens when I'm just going about my day to day. I think we all do. To steal and amend a line from Spider-Man, with great challenges come great opportunities. So on the opportunity front, I know Red Savoy is a growing franchise with some really great momentum right now. And there's a couple elements that set your franchising apart from, some other brands. Let's start with the concept of the pizza mayor. Will you share a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so we made Red a caricature of himself, and he doesn't know because he passed, but he would hate it, and it makes me happy. It's on all of our pull tabs, it's on our pizza mayor and everything like that, because Red would bust chops at his restaurant and make jokes and shoot the bull all the time, and so he'd grumble about it, but I think he'd like it actually too. When you're running a restaurant, and I think of big brands, right? Like McDonald's, Jimmy John's, like Panera, lots of units. They have huge budgets, right? And they have, the marketing budgets, and the Chick-fil-A's. I think Chick-fil-A does $7 million on average or something per store. And you're like, that's a lot of chicken. But then they're a juggernaut, because then their ad fund gets bigger, their, everything like that. Where we want to play is our franchisees, even if they're multi-unit and own multiples, is when people think of them, they think of the pizza mayor. And the pizza mayor is the person that's involved in their communities, parades on 4th of July, high school football games, being involved in your community and not just sitting inside your 4 walls. So it's an intentional getting involved in acting more like an independent, because that's where we see the greatest return on our marketing when we do that. When we are out and about and involved in, kissing babies and saying hello and all that kind of stuff. You run for mayor, but not political office, right? And so that when people see your red shirt up there, or see the logo, and they're like, oh, the Red Savoy. And because I think that if you look where independents and bartenders do really well, is they have their regulars that go to see them. And I've gone to bars with friends, and like, the food's awful, but they go there because Matt's there, Matt's working, whatever. And so if we can build that, where people really like to know the managers and the owners and the team members of these locations and get involved in your community, then they take care of you. You take care of the community, they take care of you. And so Pizza Mayor is our term for that.
Well, pizza mayor is for the win. I love that. And, another thing, so it's not just for your franchisees being the mayor and, giving back to the community, but you also, I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, like the opportunity to really create a process and kind of formalize the franchising pathway for folks who are interested. And so I'd love to talk to you just more about kind of the toolkit, the sorts of support that owners can expect when they want to start a franchise location, and just, what's available to them as they take the helm as the community pizza mayors.
Yeah, and I'll step back in franchising in general. If you're looking at franchising, is making sure that there's a lot of bad franchisors out there, right? There you can read in the restaurant business of Burger M that sold a bag of goods and took a bunch of money and then like bailed on them, right? But it is, how are they investing back in the system, and how are they investing back in your onboarding specifically, and then your support after you're open. So we have a system called the Savoy System Welcome, and this is where we teach you after you sign and you're ready to go in. You're like, okay, we're going to first give you a deep dive again on our culture, our processes, our accounting, our like here's the met, here's your KPIs, that like this is where we see really successful stores. Then we go and bring you through Rid's Way Leadership Academy. And this is where your owners and GMs come in and like learn how to make the food, how to work the POS, how to, like run the business. And we strip out a lot of the to just really streamline on, inventory, ordering, and then making the food. And then because it's so streamlined, then it's a lot of the guest interaction piece. Should happen, and won't count if you guys call a store, but we should answer the phone. Thanks for calling Red Savoy Pizza in blank. This is blank. How are you today? Stop talking and asking people and connecting with people and like really focusing on that. It goes to the pizza mayor of like looking at everybody as people. So that's a big piece of our onboarding. And then, we're training and deploying stores and free slice days and working on some of the technology and processes to, build framework. So, because it's in restaurants, it's really easy to not go do those pizza mayor things. It's, someone called in sick, or we got a really big order tonight, and then you repeat that pattern, and it's really hard. So what we call it is helping them. A framework for food in the mouth marketing is getting our food in other people's mouths. So we have a big focus on catering and all of that. So we go through that whole process during build out. And then once we're open, we're there with you as you open, and you see those really big sales days, that ongoing support. So leadership calls and making sure that, what's going on, and the big changes. We rolled out to our franchisees this big change. And, we haven't done a POS change in 10 years, but it's an investment, right? Like it's an investment in your business, and so can we make your business more profitable and more streamlined and easier and all of that kind of stuff. So we're always constantly pulling these levers in order to make our stores run as streamlined as possible. So, it really is a partnership. I think that you look at the Big Mac was an idea from a franchisee or a team member. White Castle has the same thing. So, there's countless of those things. So we're working on that feed. We've done a really good job of streamlining and getting pizza to be our core. And then taking ideas. We have a pizza on our menu called the Inferno, which came from a location that's amazing, with hot giardiniera on the product. And so then it's fun. Like, so you get open and you're fun, and then it's like, how do we maximize? And so, and that's some of the marketing stuff. That's the pull tabs and not taking ourselves too seriously. So
that's great. Yeah. I don't know if I'm more compelled to try a piece of Sota-Style pizza now or try my hand at franchising. It sounds like you guys have a really nice support structure set up for your franchisors. Reed, thank you so much for your time and insights today. This has been just a great episode. And before we close things out, is there anything we didn't ask you today that you might want to share with our listeners?
No, I think that, getting back to the Revel, I'm a talker, so I went kind of everywhere today. Regardless of technology and regardless of the business and the trials and tribulations of staffing and COVID and everything like that, is a call to the restaurant industry to realize that we're still in the hospitality business, and don't become a commodity. Take care of your guests. Even that, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and what you do impacts your brand, but it also impacts the industry. And so we're all in it together. And if you do a great job, there's enough business to go around. And so, respect the industry, respect the hospitality business, and really give it your all every day.
For sure. Yeah, there's people at the core. It's hospitality, it's service. And back to your earlier example, you could go to a favorite bar not because the product is great, but because it's the atmosphere and the relationships. And that is a really good lesson to hold with all of us. So I'm going to give you one final thanks for your time today. Really appreciate the insights, and we're excited for what's next between Revel and Red Savoy. It's going to be good.
Thanks, guys.
We get to work with the coolest brands. I absolutely loved learning more about Red and how his start as a bouncer for a Minneapolis bar ultimately transitioned into a full-blown pizza franchise.
Yes, Red Savoy truly has a great origin story and great marketing campaigns to boot. And as I dream of Sota-Style pizza, I'll have to browse YouTube to view more of that PJ Fleck commercial. Too much fun.
As we close out the episode, I'd like to extend a quick thanks to our loyal listeners. We know your time is valuable and appreciate the opportunity to be part of your day.
Very true. And if you're not a loyal listener yet, but would like to be, make sure you like and subscribe to Restaurant and Retail Revelations on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back soon with fresh content.